There's something that keeps coming to my mind, and it's along the lines of my family and just all of these multitudes of people who partake in things that, you know, I feel like most people in the world don't realize people take part in. Things like human sacrifice and voodoo and things that we think happen maybe in New Orleans or in Africa somewhere, some tribal, remote area, but most of us don't go around thinking that that we're related to people who would consume human or partake in dark magic. The thing I keep thinking about is, they were set up. Like, if you join these secret societies, I know that there's definitely a tiered level, but unless you're like, I want to say even if you are the highest of them, but if you're the highest of them, whatever that would look like, it isn't the president and people that we might think would be. Those aren't the highest, because the president and a lot of those people are really just puppets. At least I have believed that long before I knew of this stuff, and I still believe that. It's all just a big show. But there are elites, I don't dare to guess the name. There are elites that are very high ranking, and they would have more spiritual understanding than, probably any of the rest of us, of, like, man. When I say man, just mean people, but man's potential, like what we really are, what we really can be. And so I feel like there's this like bait and switch with people who join out of whatever reasons they do join, and whatever age they might be, join these different secret societies and even work their way up, and don't just remain, quote, on the porch and not really, understanding the dark things that go on, but they take part and they work their way up, and maybe they succeed in their businesses, or maybe they're able to, like, get certain positions, like become a governor or whatever, right? Even though all of that is really just, once again, it's just kind of like a puppet. Everything is it's rigged, very rigged. Like the wars and stuff, it's all fake. At least, that's what I believe. I just keep thinking about, as much as people were trying to, and are still probably, trying to, like, take me down, swap destinies with me, attack me with black magic and hexes and all these things, right? Trying to kill me, send multiple hitmen after me, and spend decades trying to attack me. Not just trying to, but attacking me. That what they're not realizing is, no matter to what level, let's say like my particular family members, no matter what level they got to, like, even if I didn't know about the things they were doing, and I didn't know, I wasn't living my life thinking everyone was out to get me. Like, that's a little bit, under normal circumstances, or what we would think is normal, that would be like, paranoia or delusional, and I wasn't, and I'm not. And so I wasn't thinking like my parents are, trying to sacrifice me as an infant, or that my uncles who molested me, that my mom was letting them, like, I didn't think like that, right? And the thing is that even if I didn't know what my parents or my relatives were were doing, or that they were doing these things intentionally, until, decades later, I still was around them to know their marriages failed on a day-to-day level. They were often depressed. Like my dad had, a boss that he was like a DOD employee for a long time, and went to work like at 4:30 in the morning, and he didn't like his job. I think he was a computer programmer, but he didn't like his boss. He didn't like it was not like he didn't enjoy going to work. Mom definitely spiraled into a deep depression after dad and her had split up, and I would have grown up at least in a lot of neglect that I was aware of, and that was more being the oldest of three girls. The cooking and things like that ended up falling on me at a relatively young age. Mom was, just kind of barely coping, coming home she was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and she would come home and, want me to bring her a soda, a tab, and a cup of ice, and she would grade papers and stay in her room pretty much the whole evening and just repeat that, I guess on the weekend she would grade more papers and watch some old movies. She's always enjoyed watching old movies. But even if they were like somehow running out and doing different seances, or who knows, the point is, in the day-to-day, these were not happy people. What did they really gain in whatever dark magic, whatever spells, whether it was voodoo or whether it was technically something different, whether they consider themselves dark witches, which I would assume they're dark witches and warlocks, but maybe I have some family somewhere that would consider themselves, just a kitchen witch or a white witch. The things they've been doing to me aren't innocent, that's for sure. But my point is these people, and I can only really speak on certain members of my family that I would have been around enough to speculate with quite a bit of, surety. No matter what else they were involved in, how sinister and how crazy and all of this stuff is that they did on the down low that I didn't know about, like eating humans and being pedophiles and things like that. Pretty horrible things. They weren't not happy people. What are they gaining by doing these things? A more youthful face for, consuming, it seems, for consuming children, or being a pedophile. It seems that you're able to siphon the energy of the child and, look younger, right? But in the end, what is it really getting? Except for maybe those very, very top. And it's like the pyramid, so that's a lot less people. So the people who are Masons, or even the ones that are higher, which I know now is like the Mennonites and the Mormons, those are higher ranking elites, but not the highest still. Maybe some of the bishops in some of the churches are, I don't know, but these aren't happy people. By and large, these are, the Mennonites hardly get divorced, and maybe the Mormons are more like that too, at least on the surface, but they're not happy people because, for one, they're not authentic. None of these people, they're all living more like a narcissist in their personality. That's why they need to siphon the energy of someone else, because they're not authentic. So they're not living from a place of authenticity. They're not truly, genuinely happy, like in their heart. So what's it all for? So what if you can have a more youthful appearance, like the infamous way that people might think Hollywood stars, people think they're getting a lot of facelifts or things like that, but it's which I don't think there's anything wrong with getting a facelift or anything, but most people don't realize it's a lot darker than that. It's like people are purchasing the energy when they realize like a certain child is born and has like, if you want to say like more of a golden aura, they have something as maybe extraordinarily creative, extraordinarily something about them. They have a lot of gifts, like all the clairs and things like that, and that's how I am, right? But like it was all suppressed and stifled through molestation and siphoning my energy through the dark arts. But the people in my family, at least, that were doing these things have 3 divorces, are mostly spending their, like, even after they're retired, they're just watching TV. I mean, I'm not saying they don't have some pleasure, but it doesn't seem to me that it's, of course I think it's all horrible and no one should take part in it, but if you are going to sell your soul or take part in things like human sacrifice, you would think it would at least be actually benefiting you in like some major ways, because that's some real crazy shit to be living your life, to just kind of be like a ho-hum, like, yeah, well, I go to Sam's Club and I get goodies and we come home and we watch Netflix and just hit repeat, or if you're working, whatever your job is, and you're still going to your 9 to 5 or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a 9 to 5. And so, then you look at the people who are like movie stars and politicians, and then, obviously they've got it, quote, a little better, but I don't know, do they really, like, on their day-to-day, like, because you are kind of trading your soul. You are kind of, the more dependent you are on someone else, whether it's a child you're molesting or someone you're eating, or just if you're not into things like that and you're just like someone who has like no like a low self-concept, and you like the person you're stuck sitting next to at a party that's just like droning on, and they're just obviously like wanting your attention or whatever, and they're kind of feeding off of you in that more simplistic way that's not so evil. Like, these are not happy people. So I guess what I want to ask is, all you people who came after me, Tracy's whole family, my whole family, what are you really getting from it? Because in the end, all it keeps really being made clear to me, and I don't claim to understand it all, how deep and dark it all is, but I can't imagine. I know you, at least somewhat. You aren't happy people. Felicia, Connie, Tracy's certainly not. No matter what persona from mine he was masking himself in, was able to have friends while he was in the military, like, these are empty, like soulless, like, even if you can go out to a casino or go on a vacation, go on a cruise or something, right? Like, yes, you're able to go and enjoy yourself and have a good time, like the Bible talks about, eat, drink, and be merry, right? Or I think it's in the Bible, but maybe it's not in the Bible actually, but like, we all can enjoy good food, and there are things like that, but is it really worth the trade of killing another? Or I guess, even maybe the people who are Hollywood stars have successfully, at least for a time, traded quote destinies with someone else. But then people like me come back online from years of being suppressed. And maybe that's when people who are in the limelight supposedly not catch, but supposedly are diagnosed with like MS. That's almost what I think with like maybe Christina Applegate. It's just or Michael J. Fox. Just a wild guess, just like more of a something I've thought about, and I don't mean to isolate or attack those two people. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not trying to say that I know that's what happened with him, but unless you've really made it big with being a star, like in the limelight and being in lots of movies and making millions and billions of dollars, but even then, even someone who's been very successful, like in the music industry or something, like in the end, on a day-to-day, besides the steak or the the pie or just maybe getting high, maybe taking hard drugs and feeling that I've never been high like that before. There's this aspect that just keeps hitting me, like it just keeps coming back into my mind again and again. I've written several poems around this issue, but it's like I think y'all got duped more than me. I think y'all are the ones getting played as you think you're coming ahead. Like, obviously my sisters and my brother-in-laws are into, whether it's Masons or whatever, the secret society that in particular that they are part of, they're molesting their children and they're living off of others. But like, both my sisters are very unhappy people, very unhappy. And I would say even compared to me at my lowest, my sisters aren't far off from that. Very overweight, just very like bitter, just not like happy people. They have to put a mask on to even, and they're twins, but my sister, who's we always thought of her as younger because she was taken out of mom's belly C-section just a few minutes later, but she's a lot more like, you can hardly get her to talk. She just doesn't have a lot to say. She just doesn't really have much of a personality, whereas I'm the oldest, but the twin who's quote older, she's more kind of just more bitchy, just more of a nag. And probably me and her are more alike as far as like at our worst and are at our most unhealed, where we tend to be angry and just we express still like that we're not happy people. My other sister is just more like, she's not happy, but she doesn't say a whole lot. And in the church circle that she has been a part of for the last over a decade, she, I feel is very stifled. I will feel her husband is doing to her what Tracy was doing to me, and yet she's obviously part of this too. And so what's it really gaining y'all to do this to people? I'm sure there are people benefiting, but they are at the top of that triangle pyramid, right? They are the ones that are, but the multitudes of people, like when I think of when I went to jail unjustly, I remember Deputy Wade. She was definitely one of them. So was Mitchell. And Miss Easton was too, which surprised me because she was the social worker. They were so panicky one day, and it was in reference to me, and I could tell that it's like I was poisoned once when I was in jail, and I still didn't know yet about my spiritual safety. I figured the poison just wasn't strong enough. It had really done a number on my intestines, but obviously I was still alive, I did realize something had happened, but they were so, like, the next day, like, they were just, like, panicky, and in reference to me and trying to get me to come out of single cell. And now that I understand, like, a lot more of this than I did back then, it's like, these people have jobs they can't stand. These people, it's just a lot of the same humdrum that anyone else deals with in the society that we live in, where most people aren't pursuing their passions, even if they do have skill or drive to, like, paint or whatever. It doesn't have to be in the arts, but they're not pursuing their passions. And so y'all are trading your souls for, like, nothing. I just wonder how many of you realize that. And as you realize that you weren't able to overcome and take me down, and even if it seemed that way for 20 some years, or with my parents 40 some years, that in the end, all that you have invested to swap destinies with me or sacrifice me or whatever it is exactly, you have failed. What has it gained you? And as you molest children, or as you even eat people in whatever way, shape, or form you're doing that, Lindsay from Homeschool Group, can't think of the dark-haired, curly-haired lady and her husband, because this is all in the churches. What is it really gaining you? Can you not see that you are the ones being taken advantage of? It's like you're being given a morsel. Here's this morsel. You can have this one chocolate chip if you molest children and eat people, and it's like, it's almost laughable. I guess you're not able to see that there are these people who own, like, factories of chocolate chips, and they're just offering you, like, this little tiny morsel, literally a morsel, to join and work hard to climb the ropes and do all these things. And really, it's like a slave system within a slave system, because unless you're at the top of that pyramid, and all of you that are listening to this aren't, you're just getting played. And I guess, I don't know how it works, if you eat a person, if you take part in something like a human sacrifice once, can you back your way out? No, you probably get killed if you try to. So, like, probably there are people who get almost caught in these groups because they don't know what they're signing up for when they first sign up. I mean, the way that they were trying to kill me, really, and how many people took their life when they couldn't get to me, that really showed me something. And then the way that there was, like, shadow, if you want to say shadow police, shadow government, that were coming and taking the dead bodies out of the ductwork in the hotel suite of these people who would kill themselves. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually true. So, like, now that all this stuff is going to come out, and all these churches and all these people who personally went after me are coming down, like, I just want any of you who are in this to think about it in a broader context. Like, can you not see that you're being turned into, inhumane person, like a beast type of person, someone who would, eat another human, someone who would not care about their child or any child and take part in molesting so that you can, look younger? What is it that it's getting you that's worth that? To become inhuman. And then once that demon or entity that is that's into those things takes over your being more and more, it is kind of like selling your soul, and there's no coming back from it, because once you're in, it would seem the group is just going to kill you if you try to say like, no, I'm not really okay with this, because for one, you already know what they do, you could expose them, but they're just going to sacrifice you and eat you. And so then it's like, do you see what I mean? Like, why? I wrote a poem about this yesterday, and the line was something like, why do thieves get surprised when other murderers tell lies? Something like that, right? It's like, if you're a cannibal and practice those kind of things, don't you know you're just going to get eaten one day too? Like, what are you expecting from people who do such things? That you do those things, and then you just live this double-faced life like you're a normal person who doesn't do those things, and you put up this front, and your whole life is a play, is a mirage. You're not authentic, and neither can you ever be, because what you really have become is a beast. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people who have killed themselves over not being able to take me out, and there's a lot more. There are a lot more that are going to be. And then there's more of them who won't take their own life, but who will end up in prison for life. And maybe in prison some more will take their life. I don't want that for anybody. I would that this whole mess would dissolve, and not, people wouldn't do these things, that people wouldn't eat human. And to anybody who still has their soul but has taken part in these things, like Rachel Jackson, you were molested like I was, by your parents and by your brothers, raped for all those years, and then you decided you would join them and molest your own children. And then same with my children, my grown children, Jaleesa, Dante, Layden. You were molested by your dad, then incest with each other, and then you decided you would do that to what? Your younger siblings? Because you don't have your own children yet. Like, at what point you can't come back? And I feel like with my oldest child, I feel that it's a clone. It's not her. She's not there. And she's been gone for a long time. And if I'm wrong, I would love to be wrong. And I thought that it was just that she was in the Mennonite cult, and just her mind was just so much of the dogma really just fucks with your mindset. But now that I know what they're really about, it's not about following Jesus and avoiding like big flowers on your dress, and your dress has to be this long, and these kind of rules and regulation. That's all just the front for what is really going on. Somehow these groups were able to persuade my children, at least my 3 grown children, to like their father, and like both sides of my family, to eat other humans, to become cannibals. And I read a couple of vampire novels that I never read before. I never had read vampire novels, or really hardly any novels as an adult. But I don't like vampire books. And reading the ones I did when I was in jail, just because there was nothing else to read, it really was insightful to me, the way they were describing. They were making it seem like it was just drinking blood from someone's neck, but now I know it's really more about like the human sacrifice. They were saying it's better than sex and better than any drugs. I guess that's what it is. It's that pleasure in the moment when you're getting it, when getting the gratification, that just allows you to be able to trade your whole, like, potential of the life that you could have. And I don't mean anything like the quote American dream, because still that's all within the context of slavery. But I just, for anyone out there who would hear me, I'm just so it's just impressing me so much. I believe Spirit is impressing upon me so much. Like, y'all are the ones getting duped. Y'all are the ones. Yeah, I got tricked and taken advantage of and done dirty, and like, that's such an understatement. I've had horrific things. I've gone through so much, but the difference is that I haven't maliciously gone after anybody, even in just a lesser way. Like, you know, I've stood in, like, honest integrity. It doesn't mean you're a perfect person. It doesn't mean you don't ever lose your cool, or it doesn't mean that you don't ever do anything wrong. But, like, see now, and this doesn't happen to everybody who is a truly sincere and authentic and good person, but in my case, I can see it's paying off. I believe this was always destined for me, but that I would choose to follow right as much as I could understand it at any given time, which did lead me into a lot of very narrow religious circles. But I never went along or knew about these more like vampiric ways. And now you're going to see me get back tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold, 1,000,000-fold all that's been taken, quote, taken, stolen from me. And I was the bait, and I'm seeing that crystal clear now. But a lot of people, like myself, are just murdered when they get too close to realizing that there's an illusion going on, more than the Matrix movie. But, you know, we can, it would seem, attain to godhood. Even I have the Mormon background, but now that I know what's really going on, you know, there is something to the Mormon teachings more than I would have believed all these years that I've been a regular Christian, after being a Mormon. And I remember once, I converted to Mormonism as like a 14-year-old. I remember once I was there like on a weekday evening. It wasn't really a church service, but there was like a youth or something thing going on in the building. And I guess this was a way that they were almost kind of baiting me, but they were putting on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and, you know, I'm sure there was popcorn, and I think it was just girls, and I remember the lady who was the adult there, I don't remember who she was, but I just remember her asking me, like, if I liked the movie. And that's come into my mind over and over in the last number of months, as I've realized that they actually are, you know, truly partaking of, like, consuming humans, more than, you know, a vampire would on a movie. But I remember telling her something along the lines like, no, I didn't really like it. It kind of, I don't know if I said it scared me, but it kind of scared me. It didn't sit right with me. I didn't like it. And, you know, the more we watch gory horror movies or things that aren't horror movies, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, nothing like a horror movie, but the more we watch things like that, the more we become comfortable, and the more we can like it, whether it's playing video games or watching a movie or whatever. And so, I mean, I guess I've just always been more of a sensitive person with certain things, like, you know, I feel that if I had answered, and honestly been able to answer in the affirmative, that I would have been, the door would have been opened for me to become a part of the in group of within the Mormon cult, which is really part of the secret society. Does that make sense? And so I feel that there's a lot of people in a lot of different ways who maybe they see a buddy who they know is part of a Masonic group or whatever, Eastern Star, whatever group, or a church sect that is really actually part of a secret society. And maybe they see like, oh, they got drafted for like, this football, team or whatever. And they see them succeeding in some way more than the average person. And so they're like, yeah, you should come too. You should get, you get scouted or you get this or I don't know. I'm really just speculating. And so I feel like a lot of people get pulled in that way. But y'all are the ones getting played, I want to say, more than the people who are more like myself. Even when the people who are more like myself are successfully murdered, which I'm sure is, I believe, all the time before me in this little system here. They still, at least, they kept their integrity. And when they come back, I do believe in reincarnation. I don't know exactly how it all works. But they got a lot less to work their way through. I don't know how I feel about all of that. If anyone listens to this, it would be better to, if you still have any of your soul left, to turn away from becoming a soulless monster. And even if you would be killed or lose your life to try to get out of that, you would at least be regaining your humanity. And I guess I believe that would count for an awful lot, especially if death is something more like, you close your eyes and you're opening them somewhere else as an infant, somewhere, maybe another part of the world. I don't know. Or maybe you get to be a spirit guide for a while. But I know it's not hell. Even the Bible doesn't teach a literal hell forever, despite certain verses being pulled out of context. I would just entreat you, ask any of you listening, to consider coming back to being human instead of continuing on in something that you think is getting you ahead. It's actually the opposite. You are being taken as fools. And whether it's this, compass on your driver's license tag that, helps you to not get tickets like the rest of us, right? All these ways, from tiny to bigger ways. I don't care if you're a governor and you get to sleep with lots of people and, you get lots of perks and you eat at fine restaurants and drive or get driven around in fancy limos or whatever. Like, that was worth your humanity? That was worth it? Because to me, it doesn't seem worth it.